Hello and welcome to How I Built This Resilience Edition. This is where we talk with founders and entrepreneurs about how they're thinking creatively about their businesses during this very challenging moment. And in the box next to me, am I pointing that in the right direction? Yes, is Julia Hartz. She's the co-founder and CEO of Eventbrite. Eventbrite manages and organizes ticketing for small and medium-sized and even large-sized events. We featured Julia and the story of Eventbrite on the podcast last year, so check it out if you haven't heard it. It is a super cool story, a lot of grinding, a lot of challenges to make that company succeed. Julia and her husband Kevin grew Eventbrite into a $1.7 billion company, went public in 2018. Obviously, the pandemic has hit live events and gatherings particularly hard, and Julia is here with an update. So welcome. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me, guys. It's great to see you.
You too. And by the way, just before I forget, if you are watching this on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube or wherever you're watching this, we are taking your questions. So please submit those questions for Julia. Any questions you have about events or Eventbrite or entrepreneurship, please submit those. We love to have your questions. First of all, how are you doing? I know you've got 3 kids. You're running a company. You're in San Francisco. How are you holding up?
Well, I have 3 kids if you count one of them as my partner.
Oh, right. Kevin. 2 kids, right?
So
of course.
2 kids. Yeah. You just made my heart stop. I think that, well, that's a loaded question, frankly. But what comes to mind to me when I hear that question is it's the highest highs and the lowest lows. And, it's I'm not really one to quote Dickens, but I have thought it's the best of times and the worst of times. It's the spring of hope. It's the winter of despair. We have everything before us. We have nothing before us. It's like this crazy polar opposite experience that's so surreal. So I'm grateful to be healthy and to have a healthy family, and adapting to the new normal as we were all doing.
Julia, for those who don't know what Eventbrite is, can you just kind of give a brief description of what you do?
Sure. So Eventbrite enables anybody to be an event creator and to gather other people around live experiences, whether they're in person or they're virtual. And we serve over 1 million creators on the platform. And those creators produced over 4.7 million events last year, which attracted hundreds of millions of people all over the world.
Wow. As you know, I think you were on the podcast late last year. It was such a cool story. We talked about, what the future holds for Eventbrite. And then this happens, this pandemic happens, this incredible headwind, which has been obviously hugely impactful on live events. We've talked with restaurant industry folks. We've talked to retailers. Those industries have been hammered really badly. Very few people are going to events. So talk a little bit about what's been happening, for your business over the past couple of months.
Well, it really began in late February. So just a couple months after we spoke, we, had a board meeting, and 2 of our board members have deep ties to businesses in China. And there was a very remarkable sense of concern from these 2 board members. So I'm so grateful for looking back now. And we started to pay really close attention to how COVID could impact particularly the United States, where 2/3 of our business is produced. And on March 5th, I woke up and looked at the previous day's results, and there it was. And, I think that the impact, the direct hit of COVID on our business really maps to the point at which we as Americans became very well aware that the virus could hit us, and was in fact hitting us. But our awareness at Eventbrite was much earlier than, sort of the mass general business awareness of the COVID impact. So in a sense that allowed us to move quickly and have this first mover advantage, but it also was an incredibly surreal and difficult time because, we knew first and foremost, our priorities were our team. So we started to get everyone ready to work from home. And for some people in offices, all over the world, that seemed very strange at the time. The second thing we needed to think about was our creators, and we needed to prepare them to cancel their events. Also, a very strange message to deliver during
Yeah.
early March. And the third thing we needed to do was to prepare consumers that events were likely not going to be happening as they had, planned and bought tickets for. So I would describe the first 3 or 4 weeks of the COVID pandemic in March and April as being incredibly surreal.
Yeah. I mean, I remember already in, I think, the first week of March when the epicenter was Seattle, if you can remember
I
that.
do.
We had an event plan there, a live event. We had to cancel it. We had to cancel or postpone all of our live events for the year. Our big summit that we do in October, we obviously had to postpone. And you've had to make some really hard decisions, Julia. I mean, you aren't just the co-founder of the company. You're the CEO. You oversaw 1,100 employees, and you had to do layoffs.
We did. It chokes me up just talking about it still. I think it's one of those things that will take a long while to get, to get emotionally okay with. But, I think for any owner of a business, when you have to make a critical decision that involves people and people's lives, it's heartbreaking and gut-wrenching. And I know many people have been on your show and have said the exact same thing. But I think that for us in particular, given the fact that we knew that this was going to be big, meaning, we could see the impact in early March. And when we looked ahead, we had a hypothesis that this would be a very big impact on our industry. And so we had to make the very hard choice of, what do we do? How do we take our own destiny in our own hands, and in the worst case scenario, be a stronger company and come out of this really fighting and being there for our customers. And so between that first day of impact and when we announced our restructuring in early April, it was brutal. I mean, there was, days and nights didn't have any delineation. Our team was working around the clock. And ultimately, what compelled us to move so quickly was the notion that we knew that we would need to make this decision, and there was really absolutely no point in dragging our feet, and that the most humane way we can move through this was decisively and getting the 45% of our company that we had to cut, getting those humans back out into the job market, and putting all the weight of our talent acquisition team and our leadership team behind them to help them find new jobs. So that's the emotional part that really compelled us to move as quickly as we did.
Wow. 45% is painful. I want to ask you about, and by the way, if you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter, please submit your questions for Julia. We're getting questions in, and I'll get to them in just a moment. But I do want to talk to you about the idea of a pivot. I know it's kind of a cliche word, and we use it a lot on the show, but it's such an important word because to me, it's a hopeful word, and it ties into this idea of resilience. Mm-hmm. We have had guests on, actually just last week, earlier this week, we had Morgan DeBon of Blavity. Their huge event, Afrotech, is going virtual, and they are selling virtual tickets. I was looking at your at Eventbrite, like some of your data points, and I guess you guys had an increase in virtual ticket sales in May compared to April, still not where it was last year. Is there some hope and a bit of, some optimism about the possibility of virtual events, making up for some of the lost revenue?
Absolutely. We have seen, multiple 1,000% increase of online events on our platform in comparison to last year. And, it's exciting to see the number of events that have pivoted from in-person live gatherings to successful online events. What's interesting is that 85% of consumers who are buying tickets to these virtual events knew the creator prior to COVID. So there's a continuity of relationship and a gathering of community on a virtual experience that didn't exist before. And our creators are, really showing us the way. And their ingenuity and their creativity is really fueling the connectivity on the platform. And in, I think, April alone, we processed over 8 million tickets to
Wow.
events virtually when, many in-person events were not happening. And so in-person events are starting to return. Smaller, hyper-local events are starting to emerge. But online events are continuing to flourish. And it's this, it's a whole new world. And frankly, our creators are showing us the way. So our job is to create a product experience that's better, faster, and more effective for what they're already using the platform to do. These are professionals. They're small businesses. They know how to generate revenue, and they're deeply connected to their community. And so we have so many incredible stories of how people like, Rada from Daybreaker took this in-person live dance party online. They've now reached 85 countries and 30,000 people through their online Saturday morning rituals. So if you haven't checked it out, you should. You would have a lot of fun with your family, Guy.
I got to check it out. Well, I mean, as you know, I do a kids show, Wow in the World, and a lot of, what we do is our live events around the country, and that's been really hard for us and for the kids who come to the shows, and also for How I Built This. We're getting a lot of questions. I'm going to start with this question from Meg Duray, who works for NPR. For NPR Presents, our live events team. As you know, Julia, we do a lot of live events and have worked with Eventbrite in the past all around the country. And Meg asks, do you have advice for event planners on how to add enough value to justify hosting paid virtual events versus free virtual events? Like what determines value in that, in that scenario?
Yeah, I'll give you a great example to sort of illustrate what we're seeing as viable business models that are emerging through online events. So there's a founder of a company called Craft Jam. Her name is Nora Abestate, and she used to have a Soho studio where she would have literally social crafting jams. And these would, be on a weekly basis. And she's been on Eventbrite for over 8 years. So she's been at this for a while. She pivoted her business to online workshops during COVID. And what she found was this incredible repeat rate. So people are showing up time and time again, and they're also ordering the craft kits to be delivered to their home. So she has this whole new revenue stream where she's bringing offline to online. And there's something really delightful about, receiving a physical good and then going online with other people who've also received that physical good, whether it's a craft kit or it's craft beer tasting or it's cheese tasting. We've seen this across the board. And so I do think that there's a really interesting hybrid that's going on between, the sort of gifting culture and physical goods, as well as these online meetups and opportunities. The second thing that we've seen is that communities and consumers are donating. They're donating because they want their creators, their event producers, their small business owners to survive through this time. Many, many small businesses received small business loans, but as we've read and as we know, that's not going to cut it for however long this is lasting. So we've seen a strong philanthropic bent to live events that have happened where event creators are asking people to just donate what they can to be in that experience. And I think that's really incredible. And finally, the third thing I would say is that while ticket prices tend to be lower, a bit lower on online events, and we imagine they may have a premium for in-person events once we can gather again in person. Those online events can hold a lot more people, right, at a lower cost. And so it's it actually works out as you look at the math and the frequency at which you can gather communities online for great content. And the final thing I'll say is that, I'm a huge fan of Priya Parker's book, The Art of Gathering.
Mm-hmm.
And I think her
Yeah.
premise of, making that gathering special is so vitally important, especially when we're not in the same space and we're not feeling each other's energy. And so, I really love how she outlines sort of why we gather: to solve problems, to be with each
Mm-hmm.
other, to celebrate, to mourn. And I think that, event creators have this opportunity to bring their creativity to a new space. But, it takes a lot to engage folks in an online environment. So I would say that more time needs to be spent on that. Why is this experience special? And how is it going to change every person's life who tunes in?
Yeah. And I guess sort of the value proposition too is if you are hosting an event, right, you are available to engage. I mean, it's not a face-to-face engagement, but you're there. You can answer questions. You can acknowledge somebody in that corner window. And there's obviously meaning in that. I want to move to another question. This is from Catherine Morse via Facebook, and she asks, she's seeing a lot of Eventbrite events for more and more for free virtual events. So she asks how is hosting free events beneficial for A, the organizations, but B, for Eventbrite, because I'm assuming you don't make money off of that, of those events.
We never have charged for free events in the history of Eventbrite, and we're a 14-year-old company. So why is that? It's a great question. Well, we feel like, our free platform capability, when you can, register for an event and free creators can host events without paying us, is a great competitive moat for Eventbrite. As a business, it attracts more and more people to the platform. And as they come to the platform, they become aware of Eventbrite. They start to think about Eventbrite when they want to find new things to do, new ways to connect with other people. And eventually, some of those consumers turn into event creators. So it's a really important part of our flywheel. It doesn't generate revenue, but it generates massive amount of awareness. The author Ibram Kendi just recently hosted a reading of excerpts from his book on anti-racism, and almost 200,000 people rather signed up for this
Wow.
reading. So
Wow.
it's for both the creator and the artist or the author, as well as Eventbrite, there's just benefit of connecting that community on the platform.
What's the advantage of doing an Eventbrite? Like, for example, here we are, we're having a live conversation, and what's the advantage of doing it as sort of a ticketed event, even if it's free, versus just putting it out there and saying, here we are?
Well, I'd come back to that notion of community. So Eventbrite, the platform, is effectively an event team in the cloud for event creators. We allow you to really easily publish a great looking event listing, which is effectively your landing page, your storefront for the event. We give you tools to get the word out about your events, whether it's through distribution. So your event can be pushed out to our distribution partners in a way where, people can click and buy the ticket without leaving wherever they are. And that really helps to drive conversion. And then we have a really amazing suite of reporting tools and analytics so that you understand, what worked, what marketing channel worked, what marketing channel didn't deliver, and who do you have now in your community? So effectively a strong CRM platform for you to re-engage for future events, which, as event creators are becoming more and more frequent event publishers in this online event world, that becomes even more important. And so the team is now, really coalescing around this idea of how do we make the frequent event creator more successful? How can we make our product experience even more intuitive and simple and reliable and really effective for them as they continue to build their businesses? And I think that when we look at the future, it's definitely a hybrid future. Our event creators have spoken loud and clear that this has opened up a channel for them to build a more global audience. However, their at the heart of what they do are in-person gatherings. So they'll, continue to be able to build both channels on one platform, which is uniquely beneficial to our creator community.
That's a question. It's sort of a question we got from Kathy Gillen Booz and Emily Pick along those lines. Is the future hybrid model, sort of in person with a virtual component? Here's my question about that. I mean, do you think we're going to go back to what events were like in January of 2020, and December of 2020? Is that possible? I mean, I think the answer is yes, that we will. But what do you think?
I'm incredibly bullish that live gatherings will reemerge. I think that they will reemerge in a different way in the short term. So I think that smaller, more, controllable gatherings will come back first, which is really the bread and butter of Eventbrite's business. We serve the mid-market of live experiences. And I think that is going to be what starts to bring us back together. I also think that there will be some really fun new formats. For instance, we've had over 1,000 drive-in events on the platform in the last month alone. A great example is the band Magic Beans in Colorado. They have an annual music festival called Beanstalk. And instead of canceling the festival, they transitioned the festival to a 2-day drive-in concert. And the reason why they did that was because they wanted to give the artists that play at their festival a platform to play live, because they don't have the followings online that would really generate, meaningful revenue. And they wanted to connect them to a live audience. And it was so successful that they're going to do a part 2 next month. So you see these, you see these pivots in format. And I think that it really shows the strength of the pent up demand for gathering. They easily sold out this new format, even though probably many people hadn't attended a drive-in concert before. And I think that when you look forward, you look way into the future. So that's the short term. When you look at the long term and you look at history, right? So the last massive pandemic that we faced as a global society, many people are pointing back to the 1917-18 flu pandemic. And what came after that was the Roaring 20s.
Right.
And there are several other examples of that where pandemics have given rise to creativity and innovation, to this thirst of life and being together. And, I think that the fact that we've been gathering for thousands of years as humans predetermines that we will be back together again.
Yeah.
But I also think that it's incumbent upon, us as a unifying force globally to understand that it is our business to keep each other safe, and that we're unified in this fight to eradicate COVID. And I think that there's something really beautiful in that.
Yeah, I do hope we get the Roaring 20s and not the Great Depression and fascism and then the war that followed.
Yes.
That would be nice.
I conveniently left those parts
out. Julia, with respect to virtual events, right? I had this conversation yesterday, a really interesting conversation with a developer who runs an esports company. And just full disclosure, and this is one of the most controversial things I'm going to say today. I am not a video gamer. It's just not part of my life. My kids play them. It's just not my thing, okay? And I don't get esports. I don't get why you would watch other people playing a basketball game on a video screen who aren't physically playing, but I want to understand that, and I think it's really interesting, and we'll probably do something on the show about it. That being said, lots of people are into this. They watch esports. They will watch other people play video games. I mean, that kind of virtual experience is there. So given that we're in this weird, odd situation, I mean, could you somewhat replicate like a conference, for example, virtually? I mean, I mentioned Afrotech. They're going to have avatars. You're going to be able to wander the halls of this virtual space as an avatar and talk and meet with other people, which seems just like a really creative idea. Do you think that that I don't know that we can approach that intimacy of human to human connection virtually? I don't think so, but I don't know. I mean, what do you think?
Well, I think that this time, this pandemic has accelerated many vectors of innovation. And, for us in, our strategy and looking forward to the future of what we do best, we leapfrogged by a few years in terms of that focus. And across the board, in terms of connectivity around the world through video, I think we're going to see just an abundance of innovation that we may have seen maybe even 20 years from now happen in the next year. That's exciting. That's the joy and hope amongst the despair and sorrow that
Yeah,
we're in. And I think that it's one of the first things we need to get right is the intimacy of communication. Because as this is great. We're one-on-one. I can see you. When we did the podcast, I couldn't see you, right? So this is actually an upgrade. But in a one-to-many or in a conference setting where, you otherwise would be walking down the hallway and run into someone, see their name badge, have a spontaneous conversation that could literally change your life. I think there's a lot to be done around solving that problem first. I don't personally believe that we will cross the sort of connectivity of feeling other people's energy.
yeah,
Right. So think about the first concert you went to.
yeah,
Can you imagine doing that in a virtual world where, you had those chills and that indelible memory? Probably not. But I do think that we're going to see a lot of problems around communication, accessibility, and connectivity solved in the next 12 months.
yeah, yeah. No, which is super exciting because everything is happening so quickly. I want to get back to we get so many great questions. This is from Nolan Short, and he asks, you are the CEO of a public company, so you also have to manage shareholder expectations. There's just so many layers of responsibility and challenge that you face as a leader. What have you kind of learned about managing company finances through this really challenging economic downturn?
Well, when we came into the crisis in the first week or so, I was really, really focused on what we had done in the previous year because the decisions that we had made to run the company, to run it responsibly, to preserve the capital that we had raised during our IPO in 2018, all of those decisions mattered a lot in that first week. When you are in crisis management mode and you're in command and control, oftentimes it's really about what you've done in the past that helps you to springboard into action. And so we really came into this in a strong position. And as we understood and looked forward to what could be the worst case scenario, it became my job to prepare for that. And it became all of our job. And I just, I would be remiss if I didn't say how in awe I am of the Brightlings who banded together and who just were at the ready to do whatever it took to help each other and to help the company. And most importantly, to help our creators navigate this horrible time. We've seen so many businesses suffer, and we feel that as a company. And so my job in the first chapter, let's say, of the crisis was to ensure that we would have, the runway to be able to be here when COVID is contained and to be the engine to rebuild the live experience economy behind our creators, because they're the ones who are really doing that. And I was so fortunate to have our board of directors, Sequoia Capital, Roelof Botha. They first funded us in the depths of the recession in 2009.
Right.
And, 10 plus years later, Roelof was on the phone with Kevin and I, my husband and co-founder, many nights in March and April. And just having those types of people surrounding us mattered a lot.
Yeah.
So another thing to think about is, who do you have around you? And how do you ensure that you have this wonderful support system in place when the going goes so tough, nobody could have ever predicted how bad it would be, right? So that mattered a whole lot.
I have to imagine, Julia, and I've asked this question of other people who've been on the show, and I just think it's like a crash course in crisis management and crisis leadership, right? I mean, this is, you had dealt with the 2008, 2009 financial crisis, but you're a much bigger company now. You're a public company. You're much more visible. And this is a worse crisis. I think there's no question about it. So just from a leadership perspective, how have you evolved and grown and become better?
Well, I think that, this is the worst crisis that has affected our generation. And, there's something unifying in that. So there's this strange comfort in knowing that no one has seen this before in their lifetime. And, I think as a leader, I've grown a lot, and I've grown because I've learned to listen and lean on my team more. And these individuals are incredible. They show resilience every day. Again, nobody ever has asked, what is in it for me? We've all been focused on the business and our customers. And I've never felt so supported by my team. So I would, again, my gratitude is endless. And every day I wake up, I feel the energy and the support of the entire company. And I think that has taught me to actually be a little less of a lone wolf in my leadership, and to really slow down. Bridget Schulte wrote this book, Overwhelmed.
Yes,
and it's one of my favorite.
Yes,
yeah, and
she's married to an NPR reporter. Yeah, sure.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
in the family.
Tom Bowman. Yeah,
so she talked about the plague of busyness and how research shows that we all hate our lives on the merry-go-round. We can't get off. We're just always busy, yet we keep leaning in more and grabbing more. And the merry-go-round came to a screeching halt. And I think that for so many people, really allowed this moment of reflection of, who am I? And I know that I had, amidst the crisis, these moments of going, what was that life? Why were we so busy? Why was it so big? And now my life has been distilled down to family, friends, and Eventbrite. Yeah. And it feels so powerful because there's a simplicity in it. Yeah. And so I think that the plague of busyness has been displaced by a global pandemic, yes. But my hope is that we as leaders can grow even more so through this just, complete moment of slowing down. Yeah. And the final thing I'll say is that with the accessibility of everyone being at home, it's been incredible to be able to have some of the most deep, meaningful conversations with my business heroes, just a Zoom call away. And that has been really helpful as well. I've learned a lot.
Before I let you go, I'm going to put you on the spot. Give me like 3 tips. If someone's watching and they want to host an event and they want to be successful and they got to do it virtually, give me 3 tips of how they should think about it and how they should think about organizing it and presenting it.
Sure. So I think first and foremost, keep it simple. Find your killer concept, that idea, that new technique, that celebration, and keep it simple. Don't try to overload the content. Really be mindful of how you're marketing the event, and really be mindful of the global audience that you're attracting to your events. Because with video now, we can have accessibility to anyone around the world. So be mindful of how you're scheduling it and how you're speaking to a global audience. And the third is be unabashed in promoting your event and asking your attendees to become promoters of your event. One of my favorite event creators, Brittany Floyd Mayo of Trap Yoga Bay, is such an incredible community organizer, and she turns each participant into a promoter of the experience, because everybody wants to bring friends to great live experiences. So I would say lean on your community to keep going and building a great business.
And just to be clear, Eventbrite integrates with Zoom and Facebook Live and all these other.
And Vimeo and many other video platforms. So it makes it just seamless for ticket buyers to get the link. They just click on a button from their confirmation, whether it's in their phone or through their email, and they access the live event, at the appropriate time.
Cool. One last question before we go. In 5 years' time, when we look back on this, and you're looking back at this moment, and I think fair to say any business that makes it through this time, you can throw anything at them, probably. Although I don't want to say that, because who knows? Who knows? You couldn't have predicted this, but I think that any business that withstands this is going to be incredibly resilient coming out of it. What do you want to take with you from this time and apply to your company and to your business philosophy and your leadership? And what's that one thing that you want to take with you and say, that's what I learned during the pandemic, and that's what I want to keep?
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, you're asking me about 5 years, and I think that we're seeing things that we wouldn't have seen 20 years from now happen today. So, I for one am taking forth the power of positivity and the possibility of innovation. And as a leader, I hope and really want to be held accountable to 5 years from now, slowing down, being in this more thoughtful mode, not being on the merry-go-round, and being transactional about life, and really being thoughtful about how we build the best product for event creators, how we build the best company for Brightlings and for those who are at the company and those who are to come, and how we continue to build strength in the live experience economy and really truly make a dent. I think that this time is such a critical time, and there's so much suffering in our country and all over the world. And my hope for all of us is that we find deeper humanity in the fact that we'll only beat this if we stick together, if we unify as one. And so I hope that 5 years from now, as a global society, we'll feel more connected. And in part, we'll feel more connected because we found each other online, but also because we needed to band together to eradicate COVID and to take care of one another.
Julia Hartz, co-founder, CEO of Eventbrite. Julia, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was really great to talk to you, Guy.
And just before we go, you mentioned a lot of, people around the world can attend these events. Well, we've got Will Plays from South Africa watching. Hello, Will. Sohaila Shakuri in Iran watching. Dante Richardson in LA, Tushar Desai in New Jersey, and many others. I'm sorry I can't say hi to all of you. Just a couple of quick updates before we go. We'll be back next week with 2 new guests for the Resilience series. On Tuesday at noon Eastern, I'll be speaking with John Foley, the founder and CEO of Peloton. Everybody seems to want a Peloton right now, so we're going to find out how it's going for them. John and I spoke in front of a live audience on the show last year, and so we're going to find out how they're doing and adapting. On next Friday, I'll be speaking with Sanj Laran, the co-founder and CEO of Squire. If you made an appointment at a barbershop recently, there is a pretty good chance you did it using the Squire app. So that should be really interesting to hear how they're doing. On Monday, we have a brand new episode of How I Built This coming out. It is the story of Tatcha, the cosmetics brand that sold to Unilever for $500 million. It is an insane story because it was really started on a whim by Vicky Tsai. It's super cool. You got to hear that story coming out on a Monday. And right now there is an existing episode that came out on Monday, Tempur-Pedic, the story of Tempur-Pedic and Bobby Trussell, how he took he had a business breeding horses for horse racing, and that collapsed, and he got into mattresses, and the rest is history. So check that out. Julia Hartz, thank you so much again. Thank you everybody for being here, and I will see you back here on Tuesday again. So have a great weekend.
Thank you. Take care.